The Council. The Council's problems were not their responsibility. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Engineer Paul Rivera watched the galactic news feeds from his office on New Geneva. 6 months had passed since humanity left the Council. The reports coming from Council space were getting worse every day. Paul had built many of the systems that were now failing across the galaxy. He knew exactly why they were breaking down and exactly how to fix them. But he also knew that his government would not let him help. The biggest crisis started in the Crimson Nebula. The Void Raiders had been quiet for almost 10 years. These pirates lived in the dark spaces between galaxies. Their ships were built from stolen technology and powered by hatred for all organized civilizations. They raided, destroyed, and disappeared back into the void. But now they were back in force. Captain Zexval of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet commanded 12 warships in the Nebula region. His job was to watch for Void Raider activity and warn the Council if they appeared. His early warning sensors had been built by humans. They could detect ships from 3 light-years away. But the sensors had stopped working 2 months ago. Now Zexval was flying blind. The attack came without warning. "Captain, we have 47 enemy ships decloaking around us," his tactical officer reported. The Void Raiders had surrounded the entire Zephyrian fleet before anyone noticed them. "How? Did they get so close?" Zexval demanded. "Our sensors are offline, sir. We cannot detect them until they are right on top of us." The battle was over in 20 minutes. The Void Raiders had weapons that could punch through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. 11 of the 12 Zephyrian ships were destroyed. Only Zexval's command ship escaped, badly damaged and leaking atmosphere. But this was just the beginning. The Void Raiders had learned something important. Council space was defenseless. The humans who had built the galaxy's best weapons and defense systems were gone. What remained was old technology that could not stand up to modern raiders. Within days, Void Raider fleets attacked 17 different systems. They moved fast, hitting planets before local defenses could respond. By the time Council military forces arrived, the raiders were already gone, taking everything valuable with them. The Council tried to coordinate a response, but their communication system was falling apart. Admiral Kethvar of the Combined Defense Fleet sent urgent messages to all Council military forces. "Assemble at coordinates 347.2 by 891.5 for joint operation against Void Raiders." The message took 3 weeks to reach some fleets. By then, the Void Raiders had attacked 6 more systems and disappeared again. "Where are they now?" Admiral Kethvar asked his intelligence officer. "We don't know, sir. Our long-range sensors cannot track them without the human quantum detection network." The Admiral felt helpless. He had fought the Void Raiders before, during their last major offensive. Back then, human technology had made it easy to find and destroy raider ships. Human weapons had cut through raider defenses like a hot knife through butter. Now the Council fleets were using weapons that were centuries old. Their detection systems were slow and unreliable. Their communication was so delayed that battles were over before help could arrive. The Void Raiders grew bolder with each successful attack. On New Geneva, Dr. Rebecca Hayes monitored the disaster with growing concern. Rebecca was humanity's leading expert on Void Raider technology. She had studied their ships and weapons for 15 years. She knew their tactics better than anyone else in human space. "They're not just raiding anymore," she told President Carter during their weekly briefing. "They're conquering. Each attack leaves behind a small occupation force. They're claiming territory." President Carter studied the tactical maps on Rebecca's screen. Red zones showed areas under Void Raider control. The red was spreading like a disease across Council space. "How bad will it get?" the President asked. "Without human intervention? They'll control 30% of Council space within 2 years, maybe more." "And the civilian populations?" Rebecca's face was grim. "The Void Raiders don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They kill everyone who resists and enslave everyone who surrenders." President Carter was quiet for a long time. Through her office window, she could see human children playing in the parks of New Geneva. They were safe here. But billions of other children across the galaxy were not. "The Council has asked for our help 16 times, she said finally. "I know. But we voted to maintain neutrality. If we fight the Void Raiders for the Council, we become their military force again. We'll never be truly independent." Meanwhile, other disasters were striking across Council space. The Mantis Collective faced extinction from a different kind of threat. Their sun was becoming unstable, just as they had warned. Without the human-built stellar stabilizer, the star was growing hotter and more violent each day. Dr. Clicktar, the lead Mantis scientist, sent daily reports to anyone who would listen. "Solar output has increased by 12% in the last month. Our planet's surface temperature has risen by 8 degrees. At this rate, our oceans will boil away within 4 months." The Mantis people were brilliant mathematicians, but they were not engineers. They could calculate exactly what was happening to their star, but they could not fix it. That required technology only humans possessed. Clicktar sent one final message to his old friend, Dr. Amanda Pierce. "We are evacuating our homeworld. 17 billion Mantis will become refugees. Our libraries, our culture, our history, all will be lost when the star explodes. We do not blame humanity for this. We blame the Council that drove you away." Amanda read the message 3 times before showing it to Paul Rivera. "Can we help them?" Paul asked. "Maybe send just one team? Save their homeworld?" Amanda shook her head. President Carter was very clear. No aid to Council species. If we save the Mantis, every other species will demand help with their problems too. "But they're going to die, Amanda. All of them." "I know, but that's not our fault." Paul stared at her. "When did we become so cold?" Amanda's voice was tired. "When the Council taught us that kindness is seen as weakness." The medical crisis was spreading too. Dr. Kevin Morris received reports from across Council space about new diseases appearing everywhere. Without human medical technology and research, the galaxy's health systems were collapsing. The Aquatic Confederation faced a plague that turned their water poisonous. The insect collective's hives were dying from a virus that attacked their group mind. The crystalline hierarchy was losing their ability to generate the light their bodies needed to survive. "It's like the galaxy's immune system is shutting down," Kevin told Amanda. "Without our research and technology, they can't fight off new diseases." "That's their choice," Amanda replied. "They voted us out. They said they didn't need us." But Kevin could see that Amanda was struggling with the decision too. She had spent her life helping beings across the galaxy. Watching them die while she had the knowledge to save them was eating her alive. The economic collapse was just as devastating. Trade between star systems dropped by 70%. Without human-designed security systems, merchant ships were easy targets for pirates. Without human communication networks, buyers and sellers could not coordinate deals quickly. The Zephyrian trade empire, which had dominated galactic commerce, for centuries lost 80% of its business in 6 months. Millions of Zephyrians lost their jobs. Their proud merchant fleets sat empty in orbital shipyards. Captain Vexnall, who had survived the pirate attack months earlier, now worked as a security guard on a space station. His ship had been sold for scrap metal. There was no point in merchant voyages when pirates controlled most of the trade routes. "I voted to restrict the humans," he told his daughter during one of their rare communications. "I thought we were protecting galactic stability. Instead, we destroyed it." On Nexus Prime, the Council met in emergency session almost every day, but they could barely function as a government anymore. The translation system had completely failed. Council members could no longer understand each other during debates. Meetings dissolved into confusion as beings shouted in languages no one else could comprehend. Councillor Veltar of the Aquatic Confederation had prepared a detailed proposal for dealing with the Void Raider threat. But when he tried to present it, the translator turned his military strategy into what sounded like a recipe for cooking algae. 3 other counselors walked out in disgust. "This is impossible," Veltar said to his aide after the meeting. "How can we govern a galaxy when we cannot even talk to each other?" The council's authority was crumbling. 12 species had already withdrawn from the organization entirely. Some had been destroyed by raiders or disasters. Others had simply given up on galactic government and retreated to their home systems. Zareth, of the crystalline hierarchy, dimmed his light in despair. "We have lost more than humanity's technology. We have lost our ability to work together. The Council is dying." But the worst was yet to come. The Void Raiders had been studying Council defenses during their raids. They had learned that the galaxy was essentially defenseless. Now they were preparing their largest offensive in 3 centuries. Intelligence reports, delayed by weeks due to communication problems, finally reached Admiral Keithvar. The Void Raider fleet massing at the Galactic Rim numbered over 800 ships. It was. The alarm bells rang through the command center on Earth. Admiral Frank Collins stood before the massive screen showing red dots across the galaxy map. Each red dot meant another world had fallen to the Vextar Empire. The aliens had been killing and eating planets for 3,000 years. No one could stop them. "Sir, we lost contact with the Kepler colony," said Commander Nancy White. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as she read the report. "The entire system went dark 6 hours ago," Frank nodded. He had expected this news. The Vextar moved, like a disease through space, consuming everything in their path. Their bioships were alive, hungry things that fed on entire worlds. After eating a planet clean, they left behind dead rock floating in space. "How many ships do we have ready?" Frank asked. "The 5th Fleet has 200 vessels," Nancy replied. "The 3rd Fleet has 150. But, sir, even our combined forces couldn't stop a single Vextar hive ship." Frank walked to the window overlooking Earth's largest spaceport. Thousands of people moved below, living their lives without knowing that death was coming for them. The Vextar had destroyed civilizations that had millions of ships. What chance did humanity have with a few hundred? "There is another option," said a voice from behind them. Frank turned to see Dr. Martin Kane entering the command center. The old scientist looked tired, but his eyes were bright with an idea that might be crazy enough to work. "The solo mission, protocol," Martin continued. "We send 1 ship deep into their space." "That's suicide," Nancy said quickly. "1 ship against their entire empire?" Martin smiled. "Maybe, but we've been studying their patterns for months. The Vextar expect large fleets. They plan for massive battles. They've never faced a single ship that refuses to follow their rules." Frank considered this. Every species that fought the Vextar used the same tactics. Build huge fleets. Fight. Massive battles. Try to match their overwhelming numbers. Every species lost using these methods. "What makes you think 1 ship could succeed where entire fleets failed?" Frank asked. "Because we're human," Martin said simply. "We don't fight the way other species fight. We adapt. We think differently. We take risks that seem impossible to others." Nancy pulled up files on her tablet. "The USS Liberty is our most advanced ship. New armor, new weapons, new engines. But it's still just 1 ship." "Who would captain such a mission?" Frank asked. "Jake Martinez," Martin answered without pause. "He's our best tactical mind. His crew trusts him completely. If anyone can pull this off, it's Jake." Frank had known Jake for 10 years. The man was brave to the point of being reckless, but his crews always came home alive. Jake saw solutions where others saw only problems. He made the impossible look easy. "Bring him in," Frank ordered. 20 minutes later, Captain Jake Martinez stood in the command center. He was a tall man with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. His uniform was perfectly clean, but his hands showed small scars from working on ship engines during his early career. "You called for me, Admiral?" Jake asked. Frank gestured to the galaxy map. We need someone to take the Liberty into Vextar space. Alone. Jake studied the map for a long moment. The red zones covered half the known galaxy. Sending one ship into that darkness was like throwing a pebble at a mountain. What's the mission objective? Jake asked. Survive as long as possible, Martin said. Learn everything you can about their ships, their tactics, their weaknesses. Send the data back to us. And if we find a way to hurt them? Jake asked. Then you hurt them, Frank said firmly. Jake was quiet for several minutes. He walked around the map, studying the red zones from different angles. Finally, he looked up at Frank. I'll need to pick my own crew, Jake said. Approved, Frank replied. Immediately. And I want full authority over mission parameters once we're in the field. Frank hesitated. Giving a captain complete freedom in enemy space was dangerous, but conventional military thinking had failed against the Vextar for 3,000 years. Approved, Frank said. Jake nodded. When do we launch? 48 hours, Martin said. That gives us time to install the new quantum drives and load the experimental weapons. I'll have my crew ready, Jake promised. As Jake left the command center, Nancy turned to Frank. Sir, are we really sending one ship to fight an empire? Frank looked at the red zones spreading across the map. We're sending Jake Martinez to remind the galaxy that humans don't surrender. The next day, Jake walked through the USS Liberty's corridors, selecting his crew. He chose Amy Brooks as his tactical officer. She was young but brilliant, able to see battle patterns others missed. Carl Wilson would be his chief engineer. The man could fix anything and improve most systems while he was at it. For his medical officer, Jake picked Dr. Helen Ross. She had steady hands and a calm mind under pressure. Lisa Parker would command his security teams. She was tough as steel and twice as smart. The communications officer would be Kate Johnson. She could speak 12 alien languages and had a gift for reading between the lines. Tony Adams would navigate their course through the most dangerous space in the galaxy. Each crew member Jake approached had the same reaction. First surprise, then understanding, then determination. None of them asked if they would come back alive. They all knew this was bigger than their individual lives. On the morning of launch, Jake stood on the Liberty's bridge. Through the viewports, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue marble. Somewhere out there, the Vextar were coming. But they would find humans waiting for them. All stations report ready, Captain, Amy said from her tactical station. Engineering shows green across the board, Carl reported. Course plotted and ready, Tony announced. Jake settled into his captain's chair. Around him, 200 of humanity's finest prepared to enter the darkness between the stars. They were sailors on an ocean of night, heading toward monsters that had never known defeat. Take us out, Tony, Jake ordered. The USS Liberty's engines came alive with a deep hum that vibrated through the hull. Slowly, then faster, the ship moved away from Earth. Behind them, the blue world grew smaller. Ahead of them waited the unknown. As they reached the edge of Earth's solar system, Jake opened a channel to the crew. We're about to enter hyperspace, he announced. When we come out, we'll be in Vextar territory. For 3,000 years, no one has challenged them and lived. Today, that changes. We're going to show them what humans can do. The Liberty's quantum drives engaged with a flash of brilliant light. In an instant, the ship vanished from Earth's sensors, carrying its crew toward a date with galactic terror. Behind them, Earth continued its slow rotation. Below, people went about their daily lives, unaware that their fate now rested in the hands of 200 brave souls racing through the void toward an empire that had never tasted defeat. The hunt was about to begin. The Vextar High Command had existed for 3,000 years without feeling fear. The ancient beings that controlled the Empire from their massive fortress ships had crushed every rebellion, destroyed every threat, consumed every world that dared resist them. But today, something was different. High Commander Zethkar floated in its biomechanical command chamber, connected to the Empire's vast communication network through tubes and cables that pierced its armored hide. Reports flooded in from across Vextar space, each one more disturbing than the last. A single human ship had appeared in the outer territories. It had destroyed several patrol vessels using tactics no one had seen before. Then it had vanished, only to reappear at a slave world where it somehow inspired a massive rebellion. But the worst news came from the intelligence division. The human broadcast was spreading across the galaxy like a virus. On 12 different slave worlds, the conquered populations had risen in revolt. For the first time in millennia, the Vextar were facing organized resistance on multiple fronts. "Bring me the Hive fleet," Zethkar commanded. Its voice echoed through the bioship like the sound of grinding metal. 500 vessels. I want this human threat ended. The massive war fleet began moving through space, a dark tide of living ships that could destroy entire star systems. Each bioship was a fusion of advanced technology and organic matter, capable of regenerating damage and growing larger by consuming enemies. The fleet had never faced defeat. Meanwhile, the USS Liberty hung in space near a massive asteroid field, hidden among the floating rocks. Jake Martinez stood on the bridge, studying the tactical displays with growing concern. "How many ships?" he asked. Amy Brooks double-checked her sensors. 500 confirmed contacts, Captain. All bioships, ranging from frigate size to several that are bigger than space stations. Jake whistled softly. The Vextar were taking this seriously. He had hoped to remain a minor annoyance, gathering intelligence while staying out of major battles. Instead, he had apparently made himself the most wanted human in the galaxy. "Any word from the slave worlds?" Jake asked. Kate Johnson looked up from her communications station. 17 systems have reported uprisings, Captain. The Vextar are sending ships to put down the rebellions, but it's stretching their forces thin. "Good," Jake said grimly. "That was the point. Amy, what's our tactical situation?" His tactical officer studied the incoming fleet. "Captain, even with our advantages, we can't fight 500 ships. Our best bet is to run and hide until they give up looking for us." Jake shook his head. "They won't give up. The Vextar have never been challenged like this. They'll hunt us to the end of the galaxy if necessary." Dr. Helen Ross looked up from her medical station. "Captain, I've been analyzing the bioship data we've collected. I think I found something important." "What is it?" Jake asked. "The organic components in their ships are all connected to a central nervous system," Helen explained. "It's like each bioship is actually a living creature with mechanical parts grafted onto it. But the really interesting part is how they communicate." Helen brought up a display showing complex wave patterns. "They use a form of biological telepathy to coordinate their movements. It's incredibly efficient, but it has a weakness." "What kind of weakness?" Jake asked. "If we could disrupt their telepathic network, even temporarily, it would be like cutting the nerve connections in a human body. They'd lose coordination, maybe even consciousness." Carl Wilson looked up from his engineering station. "What would it take to generate that kind of disruption?" "A massive electromagnetic pulse," Helen replied. "But it would have to be precisely tuned to their biological frequencies. And we'd need to overload our entire power system to generate enough energy." Jake understood immediately. "A one-shot weapon. Use it once and the ship is defenseless afterward." "Exactly," Helen confirmed. Amy frowned at her tactical display. "Captain, even if we could disable their coordination, we're still talking about 500 ships. We'd need more than just confusion to win this fight." Jake walked to the main view screen, looking out at the asteroid field around them. Millions of rocks floated in space, ranging from pebbles to mountains. An idea began forming in his mind. "Tony, what's the gravitational situation in this asteroid field?" Jake asked. His navigator ran quick calculations. "It's balanced, Captain. The larger asteroids create stable gravity wells. but it wouldn't take much to disturb the equilibrium. How much? Jake pressed. A few well-placed explosions could set off a chain reaction, Tony replied. Why do you ask, sir? Jake smiled for the first time in hours. Because we're going to give the Vextar a lesson in human creativity. Over the next several hours, Jake's crew worked frantically to prepare their trap. Carl and his engineering teams modified several torpedo warheads, turning them into gravity bombs that could destabilize the asteroid field's delicate balance. Lisa Parker led security teams through the asteroid field in shuttles, placing the modified weapons at key points where the gravitational stress was highest. Each bomb was connected to a remote detonator that would allow precise timing. Meanwhile, Helen worked with the medical team to modify the ship's sensor array, turning it into a massive electromagnetic transmitter. The process would burn out most of their systems, but it would also create the pulse needed to disrupt Vextar biocommunications. Captain, Amy reported, the Vextar fleet is 3 hours out. They're coming in a standard attack formation, spread wide to prevent us from escaping. Jake nodded. The enemy was doing exactly what he expected. The Vextar had overwhelming superiority, so they saw no need for complicated tactics. They would surround the asteroid field and systematically destroy every rock until they found the human ship. All shuttles return to the Liberty, Jake ordered. Prepare for combat. As his crew took their positions, Jake opened a communication channel to address them all. In a few hours, we're going to face the largest enemy fleet in galactic history, he announced. They expect us to run or surrender. They think humans are just another species to be conquered and consumed. Jake paused, looking around the bridge, at his officers. Each of them was ready to die if necessary. But more importantly, each of them believed they could win. They're about to learn why that's a mistake, Jake continued. We're not just fighting for our ship or our lives. We're fighting for every slave world, every conquered system, every being that's lived in fear of the Vextar Empire. Today, we show the galaxy what humans do when someone threatens our friends. The Vextar fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 500 bioships arranged themselves in a sphere around the asteroid field, their living hulls pulsing with deadly energy. Zethkar's flagship took position at the center of the formation, its massive bulk dwarfing even the other capital ships. Begin the search, Zethkar commanded. Destroy every asteroid. Leave nothing for the humans to hide behind. The bioships opened fire, their organic weapons reaching out like hungry tentacles to tear apart the floating rocks. Explosions lit up space as asteroids died one by one. But Jake was ready for them. Detonate gravity bombs 1 through 12, he ordered calmly. Lisa's finger hovered over the detonation controls. Bombs away, Captain. The first explosions were small, barely visible among the destruction the Vextar were already causing. But those small blasts triggered larger ones as the asteroid field's gravitational balance collapsed. Suddenly, millions of rocks began moving. Some crashed into each other with devastating force. Others were pulled into new orbits that sent them, spinning toward the bioships. The entire asteroid field became a chaotic maze of flying debris. Now, Helen, Jake ordered. Give them the pulse. Dr. Ross activated the electromagnetic transmitter. The USS Liberty's power systems screamed in protest as every amp of electricity flowed through the modified sensor array. The pulse that erupted from the ship was invisible, but devastating. Across the Vextar fleet, bioships suddenly went silent. The telepathic network that coordinated their movements vanished in a wash of electromagnetic noise. Ships that had moved with perfect precision seconds before now drifted helplessly, their organic components stunned into unconsciousness. Direct hit on their communications, Amy reported with satisfaction. They're flying blind. Without coordination, the Vextar fleet became a liability to itself. Ships collided with each other in the chaos. Others fired wildly, hitting their own vessels as often as the flying asteroids. but Jake knew the advantage wouldn't last long. "All power to engines," he ordered. "We need to get out of here before they recover." The Liberty shot out of the asteroid, field like a bullet racing past the confused bioships before they could react. But as Jake had feared, the electromagnetic pulse had burned out most of their systems. "Weapons are down," Amy reported. "Shields at 15%. We won't survive another major battle." Jake looked back at the chaos they were leaving behind. The Vextar fleet was starting to reorganize as their bioships recovered from the electromagnetic assault. Soon they would be hunting again, and the Liberty was in no condition to fight. But something else was happening. On the long-range sensors, new contacts were appearing. Ships were jumping out of hyperspace all around Vextar territory. Not human ships, but vessels from the Slave. The demonstration took place in the empty Kepler 1649 system, where a dead planet had been torn apart millions of years ago. Chunks of rock and metal floated through space like the bones of a giant creature. Representatives from every major alien, Power watched from observation ships at a safe distance. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Sovereign, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. The ship was sleek and white, with weapons that looked like works of art. Around him, alien ambassadors stood in protective suits, their faces showing terror they could not hide. The same creatures who had dismissed humans as primitive animals now watched with the knowledge that their civilizations hung in the balance. The tall bug alien from Zephyr clicked its mandibles nervously. The lizard alien ambassador breathed heavily through his damaged breathing mask. The gas alien floated in its containment suit, purple mist swirling with agitation. "You wanted to see what humans are capable of when pushed to the edge," Admiral Morrison said quietly. His words carried through the ship's translation systems in a dozen different languages. "You forced us to show our true nature." Captain Ben Wilson stood at the weapons console. He was a young officer with steady hands and ice-cold nerves. The device he controlled looked simple, just a metal cylinder no bigger than a small room. But the science inside it represented humanity's greatest achievement and most terrible weapon. "Project Midnight Sun is ready, Admiral," Wilson reported. The weapon worked on principles that even human scientists barely understood. It used controlled antimatter reactions to break apart the bonds that held matter together. Not with explosions or fire, but by simply making things stop existing at the most basic level. Admiral Morrison looked at each alien representative. These beings had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had destroyed entire species and conquered countless worlds. Now they waited to learn if humanity would show them mercy or wipe them from existence. "Proceed," Admiral Morrison ordered. Captain Wilson pressed a single button. The weapon fired without sound or flash. A beam of energy so thin it was almost invisible reached out toward the asteroid field. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the rocks began to disappear, not exploding or burning or breaking apart, simply ceasing to exist. Millions of tons of stone and metal that had floated through space for countless centuries just vanished as if they had never been there at all. The alien representatives stood in shocked silence. The lizard alien's breathing became rapid and shallow. The bug alien's wings trembled uncontrollably. Even the gas alien's mist moved in patterns that showed pure terror. In less than 10 minutes, an asteroid field the size of a small moon was gone. Empty space remained where solid matter had existed moments before. The demonstration was more frightening than any explosion because it was so quiet and complete. "This is what you drove us to create," Admiral Morrison continued, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Not because we wanted to build such things, but because you gave us no choice. You feared human expansion, our technology, our independence. Now you know what we are truly capable of when threatened." President Helen Carter's voice joined the transmission from Earth, her words reaching every corner of the galaxy through alien communication networks. "Humanity offers the galaxy one final choice. Accept us as equals with all the rights that..." brings, or face the consequences of continued hostility. The ethereal mediator called Veltar finally found its voice. The purple gas in its suit swirled faster as it struggled to speak. What are your terms for peace? Admiral Morrison had prepared for this moment during the long months of war planning. Complete withdrawal of all alien military forces from human territory. Recognition of humanity's right to expand and explore without interference. And most importantly, true equality in all future galactic affairs. Captain Sarah Martinez monitored communications from her station. She was Admiral Morrison's intelligence officer, a woman with sharp eyes who missed nothing. Sir, we are receiving surrender transmissions from 23 different species. The major powers are requesting immediate negotiations. The lizard alien ambassador stepped forward on shaking legs. His massive frame somehow looked smaller than before. We accept your terms unconditionally. The bug alien's voice came out as barely more than whispers through its translator. The Zephyrian Republic agrees to all human demands, one by one. The other representatives voiced their acceptance. Species that had ruled star systems for millennia now bent their heads before humanity's power. The balance of galactic politics had shifted permanently in less than a week, but Admiral Morrison felt no joy in their victory. War was never something to celebrate, even when it was necessary. He looked out at the empty space where the asteroids had been and thought about what humanity had become. 3 months later, the new Galactic Accords were signed aboard a massive space station built by human and alien workers together. The station orbited a neutral star at the galaxy's center, symbolizing the new balance of power. Humanity took its place not as supplicants begging for acceptance, but as a force that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. The other species had pushed humans to reveal their true nature, and that nature had proven more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Admiral Morrison, now serving as humanity's first galactic ambassador, stood on the station's observation deck watching ships arrive for the signing ceremony. Vessels from across the galaxy came to witness the birth of a new order. Captain Warren, now promoted to full admiral, joined him at the viewport. She had commanded her own fleet during the final stages of the war and earned the respect of every human officer. Any regrets about how things turned out, Jake? Morrison considered her question carefully. Below them, alien diplomats prepared to sign documents that would forever change their relationship with humanity. About defending our people? Never. About the methods we had to use every single day. The signing ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Alien leaders who had once dismissed humanity as primitives now signed treaties that recognized human sovereignty. The documents guaranteed humanity's right to explore, expand, and develop without interference. But perhaps the most important change was not written in any treaty. It was in the way alien eyes looked at humans now. Where once there had been contempt or pity, now there was respect mixed with healthy fear. Captain Rodriguez, who had fought in the first battle at Earth, now commanded the new UES Diplomatic, a ship designed to patrol the borders of human space. "The galaxy will never be the same," he said to his crew as they watched the ceremony. Lieutenant Adams, still serving as a communications officer but now with the rank of commander, monitored alien news broadcasts. "Sir, their historians are already calling it the fastest shift in galactic power in recorded history." Admiral Morrison signed the final document with a pen made from metal recovered from the destroyed alien fleet. As he wrote his name, he thought about the children playing on human colonies across the galaxy. They would grow up in a universe where humanity was respected and feared. But the universe was vast, and humanity had only explored a tiny portion of it. Beyond the known galaxy lay mysteries and dangers that no species had yet encountered. The aliens had learned what happened when humanity was pushed too far. Now humanity would learn what lay beyond the stars they knew. Dr. Foster, now head of the new Galactic Research Initiative, approached Admiral Morrison as the ceremony ended. "The deep space telescopes are detecting signals from outside our galaxy. Unknown technology, possibly hostile. Admiral Morrison looked up at the stars visible through the station's transparent dome. Somewhere out there, new challenges waited for humanity. The galaxy had trembled when humans showed their true nature in war. Soon, the universe itself might learn what humans could achieve in peace. The other species had forced humanity to abandon diplomacy and embrace its warrior nature. They had seen human ships destroy fleets and human weapons erase matter from existence, but they had only witnessed humanity's capacity for destruction. As human exploration ships prepared for journeys beyond the galactic rim, Admiral Morrison wondered what they would find in the vast darkness between galaxies. Whatever was out there would meet humanity not as primitive newcomers, but as a species that had earned its place through strength and determination. The galaxy had trembled, and now it belonged to those strong enough to claim it. Humanity had turned its back on peace talks and shown the universe what happened when humans were forced to fight. Now they would show the universe what humans could build when they were free to dream among the stars. Worlds that had heard Jake's broadcast. "Captain," Kate said with excitement, "I'm receiving transmissions for the Vextar home system had never been threatened. For 3,000 years, the massive bioships of the High Command floated in perfect formations around their dark star, ruling an empire that stretched across half the galaxy. The system itself was a monument to their power, with artificial planets constructed from the bones of dead civilizations. But today, rebellion burned across their empire. Slave worlds had thrown off their chains. Conquered species were fighting back with tactics learned from human broadcasts. The impossible was happening. The Vextar were losing. High Commander Zethkar floated in its command chamber, connected to the Empire's communication network through hundreds of biomechanical cables. Reports flooded in from across Vextar space, each one bringing news of another defeat, another world lost to the growing revolution. "The humans have done this," Zethkar spoke into the darkness. "One ship, one crew. They have taught the galaxy to resist us." The other members of the High Command emerged from their biomechanical shells, ancient beings that had ruled through fear for millennia. They were no longer just Vexitar, but something beyond organic life, their bodies fused with machinery that kept them alive long past their natural lifespans. "The human ship approaches our home system," reported War Commander Krelthos. "Our outer defenses detected it 3 hours ago." "Impossible," another commander protested. "No enemy has ever reached the home system. The humans are not like other enemies," Zethkar said grimly. "They do not fight as we expect. They adapt. They improvise. They refuse to surrender even when defeat is certain." Through the bioship's organic sensors, they watched a small vessel drop out of hyperspace at the system's edge. The USS Liberty looked tiny compared to the massive Vextar fortress ships that protected their homeworld, but its presence here was more frightening than a 1,000-ship invasion fleet. Aboard the Liberty, Jake Martinez studied the tactical displays with quiet determination. His ship was damaged, his crew exhausted, his weapons barely functional. They had fought their way across the galaxy, inspiring revolution wherever they went. Now they faced the heart of the Vextar Empire. "Captain," Amy Brooks said from her tactical station, "I'm reading over 50 bioships in this system. Some of them are larger than anything we've seen before." Dr. Helen Ross looked up from her medical station. "The electromagnetic pulse weapon is ready, but this will definitely be our last shot. After this, we'll have no weapons, no shields, and barely enough power to keep life support running." Jake nodded. He had known this moment would come eventually. The USS Liberty had accomplished far more than anyone had expected, but every war needed its final battle. "Communications from the Vextar flagship," Kate Johnson reported. "They're demanding we surrender." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the horrifying form of High Commander Zethkar. The ancient being was more machine than living creature, its body grotesquely fused with biomechanical systems that pulsed with alien energy. Human, Zethkar spoke, its voice like grinding metal. You have caused great damage to our empire, but your rebellion ends here. Surrender now, and we will grant you a swift death. Jake stood up, facing the alien commander, with steady eyes. My name is Captain Jake Martinez of the United Earthship Liberty. I represent humanity and every species you've enslaved over the past 3,000 years. We don't surrender to bullies. You are brave, human, Zethkar admitted. But bravery, without wisdom, is simply suicide. You cannot defeat us. We are eternal. We are inevitable. Maybe, Jake replied calmly. But you know what? We're human. And humans have a bad habit of doing impossible things. The transmission ended. Jake turned to his crew, seeing determination mixed with fear on their faces. They all knew this was likely their final battle, but not one of them looked ready to give up. Carl, how much power can you give me? Jake asked. Chief Engineer Carl Wilson checked his displays. Everything we have, Captain. But once we fire that pulse, the ship will be dead in space. Helen, will one pulse be enough to knock out their entire fleet? Dr. Ross studied her readings. If we target the largest bioship, the one with Zethkar aboard, the pulse should cascade through their telepathic network. It might disable their entire command structure. Jake looked around the bridge at his officers. Amy at tactical, ready to coordinate their final attack. Tony at navigation, prepared to guide them through the enemy fleet. Lisa monitoring security, watching for any threat to the ship. Kate at communications, ready to broadcast their last message to the galaxy. This is it, Jake announced. Tony, take us in. Full speed toward their flagship. The Liberty shot forward into the heart of the Vextar home system. Enemy bioships moved to intercept them, firing living weapons that writhed through space like serpents. The human ship's remaining shields flared and died under the assault, but Jake's crew kept the engines running through sheer determination. Hull. Breaches on decks 7 through 12, Lisa reported. We're losing atmosphere, but the bulkheads are holding. Distance to target? Jake asked. 30,000 kilometers and closing, Amy replied. We need to get closer for the pulse to be effective. The Vextar flagship was a mountain of biomechanical horror, larger than most space stations. Its surface crawled with defensive weapons that tracked the approaching human ship. Jake could see smaller bioships positioning themselves to block their approach. They're trying to shield their flagship, Amy observed. Then we go through them, Jake said simply. All remaining power to engines. Carl Wilson pushed the Liberty's engines beyond their design limits. The ship screamed through space, taking hit after hit from enemy weapons, but refusing to slow down. Pieces of hull plating flew away as the ship literally came apart around them. 10,000 kilometers, Tony announced. 5,000. 3,000. Now, Helen, Jake ordered. Dr. Ross activated the electromagnetic pulse weapon. The USS Liberty's power core overloaded completely, channeling every erg of energy. Through the modified sensor array, the pulse that erupted from the dying ship was a silent scream that rippled through space at the speed of light. The effect on the Vextar fleet was immediate and devastating. Bioships throughout the system went dark as their organic components were overwhelmed by electromagnetic chaos. The telepathic network that had coordinated the Empire for 3 millennia collapsed in an instant. High Commander Zethkar felt the pulse tear through its biomechanical body like acid. The cables connecting it to the Empire's communication network burned out, severing links that had existed for thousands of years. For the first time since becoming part of the Vextar Collective, Zethkar was alone in its own mind. Impossible, the ancient being whispered as its flagship began to die around it. We cannot be defeated. We are the masters of the galaxy. But through the failing sensors, Zethkar could see the truth. Across Vextar space, the Empire was crumbling. Without the telepathic network to coordinate them, the bioships were helpless. Rebel fleets were destroying them one by one, freed slaves were overrunning Vextar colonies, and the fear that had held the Empire together for millennia was dissolving, like smoke. Aboard the Liberty, emergency lighting bathed the bridge in red. The ship was powerless, drifting through space with no weapons, no shields, and failing life support. But Jake Martinez was smiling. "Did it work?" he asked. Helen checked. Her medical scanners, which were running on backup power. "The Vextar fleet is completely disabled, Captain. Their bioships are shutting down one by one." Kate looked up from her communications station. "Sir, I'm receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The rebel fleets are reporting total victory. The Vextar Empire is collapsing." Jake nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. The mission that had started as a desperate gamble had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. One human ship had toppled a galactic empire simply by showing the conquered peoples that resistance was possible. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "we have company." Jake looked at the main screen to see ships dropping out of hyperspace around them, but these weren't Vextar bioships. They were vessels from dozens of different species, all flying together in a massive fleet. "This is Kex of the Tarian people," came a familiar voice over the communications. "Captain Martinez, we've come to escort you home." Through the viewports, Jake could see thousands of ships from species that had been enslaved for generations. They had come to honor the human crew that had given them back their freedom. "How did they find us?" Jake asked. Kate smiled. "I've been broadcasting our position on all frequencies, sir. I figured if we were going to die out here, the galaxy should know what we accomplished." But they weren't going to die. The rebel fleet had brought medical ships, supply vessels, and engineers who could repair the Liberty's critical systems. As Jake watched, alien crews worked alongside his own people to bring the human ship back to life. "Captain," Tony said, "I'm plotting a course for Earth. We should be home in 2 weeks." Jake settled back in his command chair, watching the stars through the main view screen. Around them, thousands of ships from dozens of species formed an honor guard for the small human vessel that had changed the galaxy forever. The Vextar Empire was gone, ended not by a